Good day. A lot of us FPV pilots like to use these small GPS module receivers to activate Betaflight GPS rescue on a switch if we lose our video feed or as a failsafe for a loss of control signal. If you need a refresher on how to do that, make sure to check out this video linked in the description below. When these GPS modules have a satellite fix, they work great for those applications, whether you're flying your Diamondback Rattler lightweight micro FPV quad long range or even short range over areas where a failsafe set to drop won't do you any good. But if you're like me, one frustrating thing about using these tiny GPS module receivers can be waiting around for them to get a satellite fix after you plug in your LiPo and before you can launch your quad. Today I'm going to show you how you can reduce and minimize the amount of time it takes for your GPS module to get that satellite fix. I'll briefly explain what's needed for a satellite fix, list several ways you can minimize time to first fix, and I'll demonstrate 2 special things you can do to speed up that process to get you in the air sooner. Sound good? Then give this video a thumbs up below, share it on your favorite social media platforms, and subscribe to your TMac FPV channel, your home for your journey to better FPV fun, flights, and racing stuff.
First, let's look at our satellite lock or fix requirements, where GNSS stands for Global Navigation Satellite System. I point this out because what's normally referred to as your GPS module may actually receive signals from satellites other than GPS, such as the Russian GLONASS system, Europe's Galileo, China's Beidou, Japan's Quasi-Zenith satellite system, or India's NAVIC satellites, depending on your module type and where you're located in the world. Your module needs the current very precise time, which it obtains from the satellite messages and is saved to a battery backup RAM for use with its internal real-time clock. It also needs to know its position, which it calculates from those same received satellite signals and saves to any memory which your module may have. Finally, your module requires valid ephemeris data for at least 4 satellites, and for Betaflight Rescue, the minimum is 5. This ephemeris on each satellite is very precise orbital positioning data, and it's good for only a maximum of 4 hours. This is because the navigation satellites actually move in the sky, as depicted over here. If you're this blue dot on the globe, at the same time your module is moving, the Earth is rotating, the satellites are moving in space as well. They don't have a geostationary orbit like the communication satellites you use for your DirecTV or dish antenna. And throughout the day, your module won't be receiving messages from the same satellites. As a matter of fact, the satellites in your module's field of view in the morning aren't going to be the same satellites it sees later in the day. Your module needs all of this data to lock on to at least 4 satellites and a minimum of 5 for Betaflight GPS Rescue. So the first time you power on your module for the day, it's basically waking up and saying, where am I and what satellites can I see? If it's starting from scratch, it has to scan the entire sky within its field of view. But if it's stored what's called a valid almanac, it won't need to scan the entire sky for any satellite because it will already remember which satellites are in its field of view for that time of day. So this general orbital positional data, which is not very precise on all the satellites, gives it basically a boost or a head start to lock on the satellites for its first fix of the day. There are 3 modes which your module can start up in: cold, warm, and hot. You'll usually see these 3 modes in the product description of any module you're thinking about buying, along with their advertised acquisition times. What you need to know about these is they're based on an open sky and with the module operating by itself with no other interference or electrical noise from other components. The first mode is called a cold start. This is when your GPS module doesn't have any information anymore from its last fix. When your module starts up in this mode, when powered on with the rest of your quad's components, it could take several minutes to get its first fix. And I'm going to show you in just a bit how you can reduce this amount of time. The second mode your module can start up in is called a warm start. This is when it does have some of the information from its previous fix stored in its memory, such as the almanac, which I mentioned earlier, along with a precise time from its internal battery-operated real-time clock. It will need to download current ephemeris data, though, because the satellites will have moved significantly from where they were on its last fix. When your module starts in this mode, with all the rest of your quad's noisy electrical components, it could take a few minutes for it to get a fix. The third mode is called the hot start, and this is when your GPS module has all the required information from its last fix, and that information is still valid. That means the GPS module itself is within 100 kilometers of where it was previously, and it had its previous fix usually within the past couple of hours. All right, let's take a look at a few ways we can minimize our time to first fix of the day for our GPS module. Two of these I'm about to list I'm going to demonstrate for you here shortly, so stay with me. The first way to reduce your GPS module's time to first fix is by powering up with an unobstructed view of the sky. Do this in as much of an open area as possible. This will give your GPS module more potential satellites to receive strong signals from. The second way to reduce your GPS module's time to a fix is by eliminating or reducing the amount of electrical noise it's experiencing from your other quad's components. It's been known for a while that your quad's components generate noise that interferes with your GPS module. The Betaflight devs have discussed this many times before, and at least Pavel Spachalski has made a video showing how your quad's HD camera can interfere with your GPS module. There are three ways I can think of to reduce this electrical noise on your GPS module. First, separate it as much as possible, distance-wise, from the rest of your quad's components. Of course, this is sort of hard to do with most quads, especially micros. 3D printed GPS mounts help a little. Another way would be to shield your noisy components by using copper foil tape and/or aluminum foil. It sounds like a good way, but it's sort of tedious and impractical for FPV quads. The third way to reduce noise in your GPS module is to power it on in isolation. This is nothing new. In fact, Catch-22 Mania has a video showing how he does it, which I'll link to in the video description below. I'm going to demonstrate for you a special method which allows you to not only power up your GPS module in isolation, but keep it powered on without unplugging it after it's acquired a fix, so it won't lose that fix while powering up the rest of your quad. For your GPS module to start up with as much valid required information as possible, it's going to need some memory. I'd recommend getting one with flash memory, and those usually come with 4 to 16 megabytes. If not, at least get one with battery backup RAM. That'll give you on the order of about 32 kilobytes. Your best bet for a fast lock with your GPS module is to power it up in hot mode within 2 hours of its last fix. If you do this, most likely the information it has on the satellites which were in its view during that last fix will still be valid, and it can use that information to get its subsequent lock. Another really good way to minimize time to first fix is through what's called Assisted-GNSS. This is where your GPS module gets its information not only from the satellites, but also from other sources as well. Your smartphone uses this type of feature. This is the second special method of reducing your GPS module's time to first fix that I'm going to demonstrate for you. First, though, I'm going to demonstrate how you can do this isolated power-up method and keep it powered on so your GPS module retains its satellite lock. All right, to make our isolated power supply cable for our GPS receiver, all we're going to need is a couple wires, a male balance lead connector for your size LiPo that you use for your quad. I use 4S LiPos, so I'm using a 4S male balance lead connector. You also need a 5-volt step-down voltage regulator, and I happen to be using the iFlight MicroBEC 5-volt. This is adjustable for a 5-volt or a 12-volt output, depending upon whether or not these two tiny little pads are connected. It comes without these pads connected, so the default output voltage is 5 volts, which is exactly what we need for our GPS receiver. Links to this 5-volt step-down voltage regulator, as well as other step-down voltage regulators, are available in the video description below. This is the smallest and lightest one I could find, so these three things right here that we need to power our GPS receiver come in at a weight of 1 gram. Let's go ahead and solder this stuff up. The wires going to the balance lead connector are going to be soldered here for our 5 to 36 volt input and here. So we're going to stick it on this, and we're going to tin these input pads, 5 to 36 volts, and ground, and these output pads, ground and 5 volt output here. Next, we'll tin the wires. And the other ends. And then we need to tin this wire and this wire. That should work. I'm going to put the input power lead here. And then we're going to put the ground for it here. we want to make sure that we put these wires on the correct pins of this connector. So I'm not sure exactly which pin is supposed to be ground and which pin is supposed to be positive. So what I do is I grab this 4S LiPo with its balance connector, and you see these two ridges here. It only goes on one way. It goes in those gaps there. So it goes on like that, which means that this pin over here is ground, and we want to connect the red wire positive lead up top. Ground's going to go down here, positive up there. What I want to do first is put a piece of shrink tube on here so that I can slide it up on that pin after we connect it. Here we go. I'm going to slide this on here. Move it down. That's on there pretty good. Then we slide the shrink tube up like that. And we do the same thing for the positive lead. Doesn't matter really what color shrink tube you use. Tug on it a little bit to make sure it's secure. All right, and this is the end that's going to go into our balance lead of our LiPo battery. Now, before I even think about connecting my GPS receiver up to this regulator, I want to make sure that this regulator is working properly and outputting 5 volts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the battery to our brand new connector the proper way. Then I'm going to put a black lead negative here, positive here, and we're getting 5 volts. So this regulator, this iFlight 5-volt Beck step-down voltage regulator is working properly. Okay, now just to test this out, to make sure it's working properly, before I attempt to connect a GPS receiver that's connected to one of my quadcopters to this step-down voltage regulator, I'm going to use a spare Maytech SAM M8Q GPS receivers. And the reason I'm doing that is because we can tell when it's powered on through one of these red LEDs. When one of these LEDs lights up red, we know that it's got power. And with power, it can actually attempt to get a satellite lock. So all I'm going to do is take the connector that comes with the GPS receiver, take the power and ground leads. The yellow wire in this case for the Maytech SAM M8Q is going to the RX pad of the SAM M8Q, whereas the blue wire is going to the TX pad, it goes like this, of the GPS receiver, which goes to the RX pad of the flight controller, because TX here goes to RX on the flight controller, RX here goes to the TX on the flight controller. Anyway, all we're concerned about right now is the power and ground. So I'm going to take power. Actually, let's do ground first. It's easier for me. And power. All right, now, the way this is going to work, then, is the GPS receiver is going to get its power from the balance lead of the LiPo. And these two wires from the RX pad of the GPS receiver goes to your UART TX pad on your flight controller, and the TX wire going from the TX pad of your GPS receiver goes to the RX pad of your flight controller, UART. So let's power this up with a LiPo balance lead and watch for one of these LEDs to light up red, showing that this is getting power. There you have it. Now if we set this next to the window, we should see it get satellite lock. Let's go ahead and do that. I've got the SAM M8Q receiver along with its isolated power supply cable sitting next to the window. So when I power this up, we should see the red LED come on saying it's got power. And within a short amount of time, since it's being powered in isolation, we should see it get a satellite lock fairly quickly. Let's go ahead and power it up. We've got the red light saying it's got power. Oh, and look at that, blue light. It's already got a satellite lock. That's the magic of this isolated power supply. Power up the GPS receiver on its own. And then since we're using the balance lead of the LiPo to power this, we don't have to disconnect the GPS receiver at all. We just plug in the XT30 connector into our quadcopter and power up the rest of the components, and this should maintain lock. And after we tested out the prototype, we cleaned up the wires a little bit and added some shrink wrap. This is what the final product looks like for our isolated power supply for our GPS receiver. Turned out pretty good. Nice and clean. Very small. Total weight comes in at 2 grams. Nice. All right, that was one of the 2 special things we can do to reduce our GPS module's time to first fix, and it truly is a game changer. The second special thing we can do is actually use the Assisted-GNSS feature to configure our GPS module and get valuable information from other sources in addition to the navigation satellites themselves. This method I'm going to show you is good for any GPS module using a u-blox chipset such as the SAM M8Q or the Neo M8 series. These chipsets are available on some of the Bayesian GPS modules, Maytech modules, and other brands. The type of information available to you will depend on if your module has flash memory or battery backup RAM. With flash memory, you get more valuable information. For specifics on whether or not a GPS module has flash memory, look for it in the vendor's product description and check out the u-blox product summary document for the series module you're interested in under the u-blox unmanned vehicle page. If you're still uncertain, call or email the vendor before purchasing it. The u-blox Assisted-GNSS feature is called AssistNow, and they have a free software program which you can download called U-Center. You just download and install the program to your computer like you would any other. They even have a user's manual which walks you through how to use the application. So you just download and install from this link. And this is what your u-blox U-Center software application program looks like initially when you open it up. Now to connect your GPS module receiver to the u-blox U-Center application program, you'll need to grab one of these types of USB to serial adapters, which you can get on Amazon for like $5 to $10. I think these came 2 for $12. These are 3 different types. You don't need all 3. I happen to be using this one just because I ordered different versions and this one arrived sooner. Then you just connect your GPS receiver up to the USB to serial adapter using this cable, which I got in the same package as my GPS receiver. This end with the JST connector gets plugged into your GPS module, and these plugs right here get attached to the VCC, ground, TX, and RX. Of course, TX here goes to RX here, and RX on the USB to serial adapter goes to the TX. And the wiring pinout for GPS modules is not the same, so make sure that you connect it up properly for your particular version of the GPS module. The other end obviously gets plugged into your computer, and you're good to go. All right, once you've got your GPS module connected to your computer, and in this case, I've got my SAM M8Q GPS module connected, which only has battery backup RAM. You go to Receiver, Connection, in COM4. There are 2 types of data that you can obtain using u-blox AssistNow. One is called AssistNow Autonomous, which is what I'll be using for this SAM M8Q GPS module since it only has battery backup RAM. The other one is called AssistNow Offline Data. I'm not going to get into the specifics of the differences between AssistNow Autonomous and AssistNow Offline Data. For that, I'll refer you to the AssistNow Services Quick Start Guide, and also the u-blox M8 Receiver Description Manual. You can read up on that yourself. Since the SAM M8Q receiver's got battery backup RAM, I'm going to enable the AssistNow Autonomous feature. To do that, we go to View, Message View, u-blox, Configuration, Nav X5. We just toggle on this Use AssistNow Autonomous feature and click Send. Then we can go to Acknowledge, and we see that our message that we just sent has been successful. There's various other things that you can do with regards to configuring your GPS module within u-blox U-Center. To accomplish what we just did with the Nav X5 where we enabled AssistNow Autonomous, I don't believe you need to register with u-blox for the AssistNow Autonomous feature. And you can see over here, my GPS module receiver is now gathering data from the satellites. It's populating the data it's pulling from the satellites. What the AssistNow autonomous feature does is it provides your GPS module with that boost or head start for its first fix by extending the valid time frame of the ephemeris data, which it would normally use, up to around 3 days, as opposed to a few hours. Now the other option, AssistNow offline, will need to register with u-blox to obtain that data. To register for that AssistNow offline data, you go to this URL and fill out this form. Once you hit submit, they'll send you an email and you'll be provided with a token, which is just a alphanumeric designation which you'll need to input into a field to obtain the AssistNow offline data that you want to get. Now after you've registered and you've connected a GPS module that has flash memory to your computer, you connect as we did before, then you go to Tools, and to get the offline data you go to AssistNow Offline and you select the u-blox module series for your particular GPS module. In my case it's u-blox 8/u-blox M8, and here's where you would put in your alphanumeric designation for your token. Then you select the satellite constellations that you want the AssistNow Offline, that's what this ANO stands for, AssistNow Offline, that you want the AssistNow Offline data for. In my case, I'm going to select both GPS and GLONASS. You can select up to 5 weeks. However, the older the data gets, the less accurate and valid it is. So I would recommend only selecting 1 week at a time, which is what I'll do here. You can also select how often you want the data to appear, from 1 day up to 3 days. So you can get it every day, every other day, or every third day. If you select every day, you're going to get a lot of data and the file size is going to be bigger. And if you select every third day, you're going to get less data. However, your file size is going to be smaller. Because I'm only going to select 1 week here, I'm going to select every day. And at this point, I'm just going to click on Download from Server. Here's my 7 days worth of data. I'm going to select Flash-based to flash it to my GPS module and click on Transfer to Flash. And here's the progress of it. Retry 0 is a good thing. And when it's done, it'll show finished. Finished transfer. We press close, click OK, and that's how simple it is. Now my Bayesian BN220 GPS module has the AssistNow offline data stored in its flash memory, and it can use that for that extra boost or head start to acquire the satellite fix in minimal time. Now I'm going to show you the results of both of those special methods, powering up the GPS module with and without the isolated power supply, and also with and without the AssistNow data. This chart is representative of the results I obtained for both the SAM M8Q GPS module on the left and the Bayesian BN220 module on the right. Note that the vertical scales are different. Your results may vary from mine depending on a whole lot of factors such as the time of day, operating environment, and your specific location, among other things we've previously gone over. These are only the type of results I obtained given my situation. The bars in bright blue depict the amount of time it took for the GPS modules to obtain their first fixes, with the tall bars on the left side of each of these charts having the GPS module powered on at the same time as the rest of the quadcopter's components, and therefore without the isolated power supply. The 2 bars on the right of each of these charts are with the GPS module powered on first using the isolated power supply before connecting the LiPo XT30 to the quad. The difference between the 2 bars on the left and the ones on the right just go to show you how much of an effect the interference from the rest of the quad's components can have on your GPS module obtaining a fix. You'll also see I've captured the results for both with and without AssistNow autonomous data, or ANA, over here for the SAM M8Q on the left, and AssistNow offline data, or ANO data, for the BN220 over here on the right. The light blue bars represent a self-imposed 2-minute time frame after the GPS module got its fix, before I powered up the rest of the quad by connecting the XT30. This means I just waited another 2 minutes after the fix before I powered up the quad. The reason I did this was because I found out in my situation, if I powered up the quad without waiting an additional 2 minutes, when I did power up the quad, the GPS module would lose its fix and not recover it. In fact, over here on the left, these two little gray bars, you'll see with a SAM M8Q, it actually lost its fix even after I waited those 2 minutes before powering up the quad. But it did recover it in 19 seconds over here, which is 0.32 minutes, and in about 8 seconds, or 0.13 minutes, over here. My takeaway from these results is this. The biggest improvement in time to first fix occurs when you use the isolated power supply for the GPS module, and you'll save a little bit more time by using the AssistNow data. By using both, you could be flying in about 2.5 minutes, as depicted over here on the right, or if you didn't use either, you could still be waiting around for the GPS module to get its first fix.
Deep down in my soul, there's a place no one knows. Got so close, can't deny. Shut my eyes, love is blind. I don't need you to know all the way down in the hole. You push me out of control when the lights are out. You're mine. I fell out of my mind. Got too close, can't deny. Where have you been all my life? It's a sin, love is blind. What you do, how'd you get so pretty? Are you leaving? Are you leaving? I don't need you to know all the way down in the hole. You push me out of control when the lights are out. You're mine.
So those are some of the ways to get a faster fix with your GPS module. My favorite is with the isolated power supply. What's yours? Let me know in the comments section below, and I'll see you next video. Till then, thanks for your time. Clear skies, friend.